Hey there, Mr. Redder here. Welcome back to another episode of Reddit Podcast Stories, where today, my husband's work wifey is trying to steal him from me. So I met work wifey last Thursday at the Christmas party. She introduced herself as work wifey and she claimed my husband as work hubby and told that to everyone. When she saw me, she just exclaimed, "Oh, we're like two totally different people. How weird is that?" Not weird at all. We don't know each other. No, I mean because X and I get along so well. We totally get each other and we have a lot in common, totally. That's why he's my work hubby. I didn't know what a manic pixie dream girl was, but apparently she is one, and apparently it was something to brag about. I just found the whole thing very amusing, but on our way home, it wasn't very amusing anymore. I felt a little bit of ick watching my husband's profile, wondering what was going on in his head. He's told me about his new work colleague that he got along with. He told me that she was great at her job and that she was a gamer like him. I don't even know how to hold the joystick properly. Not even sure if it's called a joystick anymore. Ugh, I sound like a boomer, don't I? I know that they text a lot too, even on weekends. I never thought about that before now. I found myself sit on the toilet seat at 3:30 a.m. scrolling through his phone in total silence not to wake him up. She is very youthful and quirky. Her words, not mine. She is very funny too. Again, her words, not mine. She calls him hubs and hubby in every text. And in one text, she warned him that men fell easily for her and that she just wanted to give him the heads up. I guess it's because she's a youthful, quirky, funny, manic, pixie dream girl gamer. Her last text was from the same evening after we left the party. She wrote that she was upset that he didn't say goodbye before leaving and that I was a bit surprising to her because she didn't expect him to have this type. OMG, your wife is boring. I didn't expect that. I felt ashamed when I came to my senses. Cowering over his phone and reading weird, very juvenile messages, instead of being sound asleep beside my husband, that makes me safe in our relationship. But I couldn't help but agree with manic wifey in some parts. Why is he continually engaging with her? He doesn't flirt back, nor does he initiate conversations, but he doesn't really shut her down. My husband can be stupid and not noticing flirting, but I feel that this is just beyond being stupid. Does he enjoy the attention, or worse, does he reciprocate it? I just don't understand what's going on between them. Today I had my usual brunch with my mom, aunt, sister, and sister-in-law. They said that I was the jerk for not nipping it in the bud, and by it, they meant the budding affair. I disagreed and tried to explain that I couldn't be in a relationship where I needed to stand guard to keep away temptations. I want a marriage where he's with me because he wants to be with me, and if he cheats then, he doesn't want to be with me. My mother was the one who got the most upset and called me a moron and a jerk, and said that this wasn't the mature thing to do. I need to tell my husband to end his friendship, because if I didn't, then I let him cheat. Am I the jerk? I can't believe what life this is that they want me to lead, and how it's so normal for my family to think that way. I want a willing husband, not a prisoner. I want someone who wants me 100% or nothing. Not the jerk, but I would be having a conversation with your husband about it and telling him how you feel. Whether he's initiating the conversation or flirting or not doesn't really matter if he's entertaining the conversation regardless. His colleague is bold, that's for sure. I can't believe she had the audacity to introduce herself to you as his work wife and then turn around and talk badly about you to your husband. She's fishing him to see what he thinks about his wife. I understand where you're coming from in regard to your husband, and you holding him accountable to being your partner is not the equivalent of him being a hostage. Personally, I hate the whole work husband and work wife BS. You mentioned your husband being oblivious. Let's give him the benefit of the doubt and say that's the case. What's wrong with pointing out how inappropriate what she's doing and his enabling behavior is? If he did not realize it, he'll address it, right? Well, who do you think is the jerk? OP or husband and his work wifey? Please let us know. If Reddit boy tried to pull this crap, he'd need a new head. Found an abandoned car in the woods, and it looked like something bad may have happened. I found an abandoned 99 Honda Civic in the forest. Normally I wouldn't think much of an abandoned car, but this just looked like something might have happened. The trunk was popped and items still inside. These items were a box of diapers, a sunshade for a pram, an infant-sized winter jacket, a plush toy for an infant, and an open envelope with a paycheck from a business in Reno. The envelope has a name, address, and employee ID number on it. There was a baby carrier in the back seat, which luckily only had some trash in it and not a baby. The other things in the car were just some foods, drinks, trash, and a sock. The car had the license plate removed and the lights and radio also removed, as well as the back tires removed. Outside the car was an empty box of diapers, a high heel hanging from a tree with the sole torn up, and the matching across the clearing on the ground, and a mound of fresh dirt between the shoe, tree, and car. I took photos of everything, and I wrote down the VIN and the name and the address on the envelope. I wandered around the surrounding area of the forest a bit more, and I found a pile of clothes strewn about on the ground, maybe 100 feet away from the tree line. I ran the VIN number through an online search, and the number doesn't come back as reported stolen. The other things that unnerved me were that everything was dry and mostly clean compared to the surroundings. We've had constant rainfall, and the ground was muddy, yet the diaper box on the ground was dry. The cardboard didn't seem to have been rained on or anything, or even absorbed much water from the mud. The contents of the trunk were also dry and fairly clean, which seemed wrong given the fresh mud and consistent rain. The exposed metal from where the tires were removed also hadn't rusted yet. The car was also neatly parked in the clearing and not on the road like it had got stuck in the mud or the snow. I called all of this into the police, gave them photos and the GPS location and Forest Service road number, but I've heard nothing back. The county this forest sits in is pretty small, so I don't even know if the police have the resources to even check on the car. I want to get some closure that whoever this belonged to is okay, and this is just a stolen car left in the woods. Does anyone have advice on what I can do to get more information on what happened? I'll admit, this forest has always given me an unnerving vibe, so maybe I'm reading too deep into this, but I do want to make sure that nothing worse happened to whoever owned that car. Update. I have good news. This was luckily the best case scenario, and my update is mundane. With the help of other users with far better detective skills than me, we were able to track down the individual's Facebook page. This has been confirmed to be the individual who owned the car. She's safe and her kid is safe as well. She's active on Facebook, and I contacted her with information on where her car is. She had posted about it being stolen in early September, and no one else had stumbled upon it until I did. Am I the jerk for coming to dinner with my ex and his new girlfriend uninvited? I, 32 female, broke up with my longtime partner, male 33, right before lockdown. We stayed in the same house during lockdown and continued to live together after lockdown was lifted because we generally get along, and we had a kid, a daughter who's 11, to raise together. Over the last 3 years, we've been roommates and co-parents, and that's it. One day, he was supposed to take our daughter to buy new school clothes, and she came back 10 minutes later in tears. She said they were on their way to the store when his new girlfriend called, and he drove her back home and dropped her off so he could go spend time with her. He even asked our daughter to lie to me for him, but she was tired of covering for him, implying that she had been lying for him for a while now. When he got home, we had a massive argument. I didn't care if he dated other girls. I cared that for some reason, he thought he had to sneak around, and it made him act like a jerk to me and our daughter. I told him if he had been a man about this new girl and just introduced me to her, then maybe we could have all been friends. But instead, he had to act like a teenager. It ended with him moving out to live with his parents. A couple of days later, he called and apologized. He said he hoped it wasn't too late for him to do things right, and he hopes we can all be friends. I was hopeful that we could finally co-parent in peace for the sake of our kid. This is where I might be the jerk. I've always been close with my ex's parents, to the point where even after we broke up, I would be invited over regularly for dinner. They said even if I wasn't their son's partner, I'm still their grandchild's mother, and that makes me family. So one day when my daughter texts me while at my ex's parents' house and invites me to dinner because they're having my favorite meal, I don't think twice about coming over, even though my ex and his girlfriend I've never met now live there. I figured everyone had to be okay with it since my daughter was inviting me. I end up having dinner with my ex's parents and daughter, but my ex only comes upstairs to grab 2 plates of food and goes back downstairs. I ask my ex's mom why, and she says his girlfriend doesn't feel well today. Whatever, I think. She's just sick, and I'll meet her another day. I have a perfectly pleasant dinner with my ex-in-laws, help clean up, and make a promise to bring them a coconut cake, ex-father-in-law's favorite, and take my daughter home. Later, my ex blows up my phone with texts and calls, saying it was so weird and rude that I came over for dinner uninvited, that I made his new girlfriend uncomfortable and like she wasn't welcome there, and that I caused trouble in their relationship because she assumes we must still be in love for me to come over and see his parents out of the blue like that, because exes don't do that and it's creepy. I had a talk with my daughter and asked her calmly if she had asked everyone else there if it was okay that I come over before she texted me, and she sheepishly said she didn't know she had to do that since it had never been a problem before. I didn't tell her about her dad's meltdown at me, or tell her dad that she's the one who invited me. She's a kid and shouldn't be involved. Instead, I just told him I'm sorry for me dropping by making things awkward, but I thought he wanted us all to be friends from now on, and I figured this was a good place to start being friends. He said there was no way she'd want to be my friend now that I made her feel uncomfortable in her own home. It wasn't my intention to make anyone uncomfortable, but I admit I'd be perturbed if he brought this woman into my home and I had not even been warned first. So, am I the jerk? Update. From now on, X's new girlfriend will be called Kay. The day after the dinner, I bring my father-in-law the coconut cake I promised, but not wanting to stir up trouble, I text that I'm bringing it over instead of dropping by unannounced like I normally would. Father-in-law meets me on the porch instead of inviting me in like he normally would, and I gathered from his distant but polite tone and body language that he was basically shooing me away. I was hurt that a man who had always treated me like a daughter was being cold, but I didn't say anything about it and I left. Over the next couple weeks, my ex-in-laws continue to hold me at arm's length, where once I would consider them not only family, but close friends. I used to take mother-in-law to doctor's appointments and shopping trips, but texts asking her about her next appointment or inviting her to come shopping with me went unanswered. I used to go fishing and go-karting with father-in-law, but these invites also stopped. I had a sneaking suspicion my ex was behind the sudden change in my ex-in-laws, and I also started to notice a change in my daughter. Because my ex and I were never actually married, there was no actual custody agreement between us. She would just text her dad if she wanted him to come pick her up, or text me if she wanted to come home. She's always been a daddy's girl and spent more time with him than she did home with me, and I was fine with that. But after the dinner, she spent a lot more time home with me, and one day she went with her dad only to call me within the hour, crying and asking me to pick her up. On the way home, I gently reminded her that she could talk to me about anything, even if it was hard. That adjusting to her dad having Kay in his life would be a challenge, but if she had any problems, she could tell me, and I'd help her fix them. And she told me what had transpired over my ex and Kay's relationship from her point of view. My ex and Kay had been dating for about 6 months before my daughter told me, and she pretty much knew about it from the beginning. My ex told her she couldn't tell me about it, and she agreed because she didn't want us to fight. My ex also had Kay around my daughter from the beginning, and my daughter was wary of her at first, but started to like her. So the people saying I should meet Kay before she was around my daughter, that ship unfortunately sailed long ago. The day after the dinner, mother-in-law texted my daughter and basically said, "You're not in any trouble, but don't mention your mom around Kay again." My daughter texted back, asking why, and she just said, "It's just easier not to upset her." Kay started doing all the things with my ex-in-laws that I used to do. She took mother-in-law to doctor's appointments. She took mother-in-law shopping. She went fishing with my father-in-law and tried to replicate my coconut cake. My daughter tried talking to her dad and said it felt like Kay was trying to replace me. And my dad just said, "Well, she's just being their daughter-in-law. Your mother isn't their daughter-in-law anymore." Still, my daughter is stubborn and insisted it wasn't fair that her mother was being excluded from the family. Her dad just kept repeating, "She's not family," to which my daughter yelled, "She's my mom. That makes her more family than Kay." At this point, Kay apparently got up and left the room while my ex ran after her. Kay didn't just leave the room though. She took her keys, got in her car, and drove away. My ex drove after her, and mother-in-law and father-in-law started scolding my daughter and saying she needed to apologize to Kay when she got back. That's when my daughter called me in tears and asked me to come pick her up. She's insistent that she doesn't want to go back over there until they all apologize to her, and I don't blame her. I'm honestly at a loss at all this. My ex never had a problem with me being close with his parents, even though we broke up. I was the one who stayed with mother-in-law in the hospital for 4 months after she had a heart attack and subsequent heart surgery in 2021. I was the one who went to doctor's appointments and organized her medication and helped her with physical therapy. I was the one cooking meals every night and bringing them to father-in-law because both he and my ex had been spoiled rotten by mother-in-law and don't even know how to cook for themselves. I was the one cleaning the house for them for over a year when mother-in-law recovered. I did it all because I loved them, not just as family to my kid, but as dear friends. I don't know if this sudden change in behavior is how my ex felt all along or if Kay had something to do with it. though I suspect it's a combination of both. My ex has weaponized incompetence down to an art form, and I suspect now that he has a replacement woman to take care of him and his aging parents, and he no longer wants me to do it. But that's basically all that's happened over the last month. Radio silence for me from people I used to love dearly, and them pushing my daughter away until she ran home in tears. And as sad as I am for me, it breaks my heart for her tenfold. Update. It's only been a couple of days since my daughter called me crying, and she's been distracting herself with school and friends, so I haven't really had time to sit her down and talk about how she's feeling at all. All I've asked her is if she wants me to tell her if her dad tries calling, and she said yes. She wants to know if he tries to call. She's had monthly online therapy sessions since her dad and I first broke up, but the first thing I did in light of this was contact her therapist and schedule her for an emergency in-person session. I've seen several people mentioning contacting a lawyer and getting a custody agreement set up, and I'm a little ashamed to admit it hadn't occurred to me to do that. My ex hates anything to do with court proceedings. It's an almost irrational fear of his. He once had a panic attack over getting a jury duty letter. So part of me thinks he won't take this to court, but the other half of me knows that I don't even know this man anymore, and I'm absolutely not leaving anything to chance. I'll be looking into getting a lawyer as soon as possible and see if we can get some sort of emergency custody order that says she doesn't have to go back there until the matter of split custody is decided. Update. I don't want to go into too many details because the situation doesn't really involve me anymore, just my ex, and he is still my daughter's father, so I'll give the short version. When my ex was contacted by my lawyer, he started blowing up my phone, saying I was trying to take his daughter and all his money away from him, and how could I do this to him because he would never do this to me, etc. I shut that down quick and told him I didn't want a dime from him. I just wanted some assurance that the agreement we already had in place, daughter stays with me but is free to visit him, stays in place. He kept trying to say lawyers were unnecessary because he wasn't going to try to take her. I stuck to my guns and he eventually caved. Meanwhile, I had my own things to sort through, and so did my daughter. It took a while to fully own the fact that I definitely contributed to the pain that she's now feeling. When I broke up with my ex, I comforted her by telling her nothing would change. We were still living together. Then her dad moved out, and still I told her nothing will change. I'll still be active in father-in-law and mother-in-law's lives. I'll still go over there with you all the time. And while that was a nice thought, it didn't really prepare my daughter for the reality that families change all the time, and change doesn't have to be bad or scary. This whole time, she was basing her mental health on the idea that nothing about her family would change. So Kay's introduction slowly started to crumble away that feeling. But change is good, change is normal. I may not like being cut off from my in-laws, but they're not wrong when they say that I'm not family anymore. They're not wrong for trying to be welcoming to the new woman in their son's life. It sucks, but life goes on. Anyway, my daughter has been going over there for a few hours about once or twice a week with lots of caveats that she, her dad, and I all agreed to. She gets to decide when she comes over. Her dad can invite her, but she's allowed to say no and he can't argue. No one will force her to interact with father-in-law, mother-in-law, or Kay if she doesn't want to. No one will take her anywhere if she doesn't want to go. If anyone makes her uncomfortable, she'll leave and walk to Diane's house and call me to come pick her up. Diane is a coworker of mine who lives 3 blocks away and has known my daughter since she was a baby. This arrangement has been working out, and my daughter has said everyone has been extra nice to her, but they haven't actually said sorry for anything they did. She slowly started to seem happier and happier over there, and asked if she could go to father-in-law's birthday party because her aunt and uncle from out of state would be visiting with her cousins, and I said yes. Well, tonight she came home and told me a doozy of a story. The party was great, everyone was having a good time, and my daughter's older cousin was showing her how to play the Nintendo 64. Kay was nowhere to be found. Apparently, she didn't feel good again, and my ex went downstairs to check on her. Suddenly, they heard him screaming, "Where is it? What did you do with it?" Everyone got quiet and looked to the stairs, where my ex stomped up and said everyone had to turn out their pockets because some money was missing from father-in-law and mother-in-law's safe. For some context, the safe is locked under the stairs and needs a key and combination to get into it. It has important documents for the whole family and emergency cash in it. Father-in-law, mother-in-law, my ex, and now Kay are the only ones who know the combination, and the only key is hidden in father-in-law and mother-in-law's room. My ex went downstairs to check on Kay, and she was asleep in bed, but the door to the cupboard under the stairs was open. He got a bad feeling and checked the safe, and about $2,000 was missing. He woke Kay up, and she cried and said she had been asleep the whole time, and someone must have come down and stolen the money while she was asleep. I was pretty gratified to hear that my ex's family are nowhere near as naive as he is, and immediately tore into him for believing that lie. None of them had a key or knew the combination, and all of them had been hanging out in the living room. Kay cleans father-in-law and mother-in-law's room all the time, and she knew where the key was. He told Kay the combination. Kay was downstairs the whole time. Kay is the only person who could have done it. He tried to defend Kay and told everyone to leave her alone. But father-in-law put his foot down and told his son to find the money or he would call the cops to do it. My ex went back downstairs to talk to Kay, and everyone upstairs could hear her crying and calling him names. She went to get in her car, and my ex followed her. And what did he see sitting in her back seat? A bag stuffed to the brim with money. A bag that wasn't there a few hours ago. My ex tried to stop Kay from leaving, but she tore out of the driveway. Father-in-law and mother-in-law are furious and want to press charges, and my ex is begging them not to, saying he can get her to bring it back. I don't know where this is going to go next, but honestly, I'm just kind of glad Kay and my ex didn't take me up on my original offer to be friends, because holy cow. Am I the jerk for freaking out at my husband's thoughtful gift? Yesterday was my birthday. My husband was getting on my case lately about buying too many peppermint mocha lattes from Starbucks. For 2 days before my birthday, he's hyping me up about the gift that he will give me first thing in the morning. So he surprised me with a homemade peppermint mocha latte that he made. The twist is, he made it with essential oils that some random lady at a health food store assured him were okay. I have a panic attack after he tells me he fed me essential oils. I felt enraged and hated when I looked on the essential oil bottle and it clearly states that it's for use in a humidifier. He didn't even read the bottle before deciding to make me this sweet gesture with it. I've never been interested in essential oils, so he has no reason to think I'd want to ingest this. He says he isn't the jerk because how could he know a shopkeeper would lie? Am I the jerk for blowing up and telling him that I'm so disappointed? Update. Poison Control said I'll be fine, and it's probably the panic attack that messed up my stomach. He bought the food-safe peppermint so he can redo the drink safely now. Husband understands I'm not an essential oil gal and won't be giving me any more, ever. Not the jerk. Are you okay? As in, not sick? I can't even process the idea of thinking an essential oil is the way to flavor your coffee. It would have taken him minutes to either find the hard candy cane style stirs for coffee or a candy cane itself slowly dissolved in the coffee, or the syrups used in the coffee shops. I can't compute that being his big surprise idea at all. I expected you to say a fancy coffee maker or something to do your own coffees, not a poisoned drink. I'm sorry it ruined your birthday. I can't imagine the anxiety or disappointment, but I hope you find a way to celebrate for yourself. Maybe an extra trip to the coffee shop is in order. Heck, get a snack while you're there. OP. My stomach hurt really bad the next day, today, but I'm okay. He fed his sister one of these coffees too, 2 days ago, and she's okay. Wait, he did it twice? Oh my, that's worse. I'm glad his sister is okay, but that could have gone so differently. Does he realize how dangerous the situation could have been? I hope he's extremely apologetic at the very least. I also wonder if he really did ask for advice from a store employee, because surely there could have been some serious legal implications for them advising that a product is safe for human consumption when it clearly isn't. I'd be telling your husband you plan to file a complaint ASAP, because even if it's just minor, you had side effects. The next person to be given such advice might not be so lucky. Keep an eye on yourself, and I hope you feel better soon. P.S. I would get checked out ASAP to be safe if I were in your situation. Not the jerk. Dear OP's husband, had you thought for a single second, or Googled, you'd found that you can buy peppermint syrup. Non-food grade essential oils are toxic in large quantities. Get over yourself. Ho ho holy cow. OP, this is the most unattractive part. Why do people think they're too good to Google stuff? Not the jerk. This is definitely divorce worthy. By giving you this coffee that he made, there's no telling what could have happened to you. Do you really think a man who loves you would put you in this kind of a position? You deserve so much better, and I hope you find it. You're the jerk. Welcome to 2023, where a guy makes his wife a special mocha on her birthday, and instead of showing any appreciation, she goes on the internet to complain about how horrible he is, where she receives validation from a bunch of bitter losers. There's nothing wrong with flavoring your drinks with a few drops of essential oils, and the wording on the bottle is just a disclaimer. There are tons of products with the same disclaimer that are meant to be consumed, I guess you've been living under a rock and didn't know this. You're totally overreacting and you sound absolutely insufferable. You know why his sister was fine when she drank it? Because she's a mature adult who doesn't throw a fit when they get all upset over nothing like you did. I feel so bad for your husband, along with most guys these days who are stuck with wives like you. If the wife had made the special drink for her husband and added a few drops of essential oil to it and the husband threw a fit, you would all be calling him a man-child and telling her to never do anything nice for him again. Why are you all so obsessed with turning women against their husbands? Don't get married, guys. It's just not worth it these days. You will not be appreciated or respected, and when you make your wife a special mocha, she will talk smack about you online and everyone will insult you for it. Well, now you know your husband is illiterate. He can't read the "not safe for human consumption" warning clearly written on the bottle. And he's cheap because he thinks you spend too much money at Starbucks. Am I the jerk for rolling my eyes at my boyfriend's proposal because it took 25 years of me begging? Yesterday, after dinner, my boyfriend of 30 years proposed to me. He just walked towards me holding a box and said to open it. It was a ring, and I had pictured this moment a million different times but never thought I'd be so apathetic. My boyfriend then said that he was retired now and wants to kick back and enjoy life with me and would love to do it all with me as his wife. A nice speech and all, but from the 5-year mark of our relationship onwards, I had been making clear my deep desire to get married and was consistently dismissed, given empty promises, gaslit. We've been to therapy during this time, and I was in denial about the fact he was just giving me the false illusion of progress to stall. My boyfriend and I have 4 kids. The oldest 3 are adults, while the youngest is 15. She was not at home when all of this went down. All of our kids went to a private school filled with typical Southern soccer parents. I had to endure PTA moms' jabs about me not sharing a last name with my kids. Preteen years were horrible because the other kids would taunt my kids by saying, "Your dad would rather be a sinner than marry your mom." My boyfriend's mom would tell him marriage would be selfish on my part, it's just a piece of paper. My boyfriend ended up rising in the ranks until he became an executive. I was a stay-at-home mom, so I felt like there was always a power imbalance, exasperated by the fact I could be tossed anytime. I partly did stay because I wanted my kids to have the best life and because I felt lucky and proud to be partnered with such an intelligent, successful man, but also because I loved him. These past few years, my boyfriend's career has taken a downturn. He will never be poor, but the company he was part of took a nosedive during 2020, and he had made enemies out of associates and board members. He decided to step back from his role and take the generous severance agreed upon. Now he's living off his investments and wants to relax. I did not like how his career ended and how he treated people and had been deciding whether I wanted to leave and find somebody else after our youngest turned 18. So the proposal was a shock because I should hope that he noticed I've avoided conversations about the future as of late. He rattles on about downsizing our house so we can travel and also cutting back on other expenses. But we're not married, so it's all his money and house anyway. He did notice my eye roll and was offended. He asked what's wrong, and I said that suddenly now that he's downsizing, I'm good enough to marry. He got mad and said that now that he's downsizing and no longer an executive, I suddenly think our relationship is disrespectful and started implying I was a gold digger. I was so angry I walked out and said I might just go out looking for a respectful relationship because I don't know what respect is anymore. Am I the jerk? Wowza, what did you expect? Like seriously, you wanted a marriage, but you stayed half your life with someone so set on making you the bad guy for wanting that until recently. Why would you stay with someone like that? Why would you reproduce with someone like that several times? It's just disappointing for your kids to suffer that much bullying for this, like all for nothing. I don't know who the jerk is, but unfortunately for him, he kind of missed the chance. And unfortunately for you, you put yourself in a box. If you were begging him to propose, why did you stay for 25 years? Help me understand what sympathy OP wants. This is a bed you made and laid in for 30 years. He showed you early on he didn't want to be your husband, but you stayed. You get a crappy proposal and you want to be upset about it? Not only that, you had 4 kids with this dude. Not the jerk for rolling your eyes. You're the jerk, everyone sucks here, for enabling him to do this for 25 years. Get all of the privileges of being a husband without ever being your husband. You begged someone to marry you, a value that you have. He didn't, and you proceeded to have several kids with him. Like, girl, stand up, please. He wasted your whole life, and now he's playing in your face. You're in your 50s and you have kids with him. You've probably lived together long enough to be common law married. In my opinion, it's a stupid and wasteful ritual that humans use to make their coupling official. Traditions don't really matter. You're the jerk. Go pout and then get over yourself. You're not a princess. Sure, blah blah blah. Here's what I read. Willingly chose to stay with uber-rich executive who made it clear at the time he wasn't into marriage. Executive stops making extra mega money and suddenly it's time to walk. The fact this impressive man has built enough financial stability and freedom to live a modest, comfortable life of 25 to 30 years of retirement and travel isn't enough for you. The fact that he stayed with you all these years and now says, yes, I'm retiring at 50 and I'm still happy and wanting you, isn't enough for you. The fact that this rich 50-year-old didn't dump your ungrateful self and find a willing 25-year-old to rock his world on every continent isn't enough for you. Do him a favor and walk like you want. I'll see you back here in a year or two crying about how it's so hard out there. Women like you are the worst. Yes, you're clearly the jerk. Yes, us young 20-something-year-old women would love to settle down with some crusty 50-plus-year-old man with 4 kids from a previous relationship with a woman he had strung on for 2+ decades. Buzz off. The absolute delusion in men like you. What does she think her prospects are at this point? She's gonna have to get a job like everyone else. But at this point, I think she blew it. I wouldn't marry her if I was that guy. I think you should get married, and when your youngest turns 18, you divorce and get half of his stuff. Just make sure that it's possible. You dedicated your life to raising his kids and taking care of his house so he could rise in his career. You deserve your part in it also, not the jerk. Your mindset is probably the reason he didn't marry her. Not the jerk. No reason to stay. Leave him and have him pay child support. Your kid is old enough to choose who they want to live with. Find someone who will respect you, finally. He proposed because he's scared. He wants to wrap you up because he can't impress another woman now and doesn't want to be alone. Or you can say yes, but you want a prenup to protect your future. Half his investments and money should be a start. Karen divorces me and marries her boss. Huge mistake. I, 47, got divorced from my first wife when I was 29. We had 2 kids and my folks loved them more than anything. My ex-wife wasn't happy with the lifestyle that I could provide. I wasn't making a lot of money, but we weren't in debt or anything. We had good cars and we had just put a down payment on our first home that we could own. Her boss was rich. He was 47 and he could provide luxuries that were out of my reach. She left me for him. I still had to pay child support, but I guess I was lucky that I didn't pay spousal support. I had to work and I couldn't get custody. I got visitation, and my ex made it hard. The kids were young and she manipulated them. If I had planned to take them to a local resort for our summer vacation, she would take them to Disneyland the week before. I would always come up short. Eventually, the kids refused to spend time with me. It went to court, and I basically had to accept that I couldn't force them to see me or my parents. I met my second wife, who's 33, at the dog park when I was 37 and she was 24. She had a son who was about the age my son was the last time my parents got to see him. My parents accepted him right away. He loves them. My wife is like a daughter to them. It is what I always wanted for a life. We have 2 more kids now who are 8 and 5. My stepson is about to graduate next year. So a few years ago, my dad sold his company. He's an engineer and he had some patents that ended up being worth a fair bit of money. He paid off my house. He also made educational funds for my 3 kids. He figured the older ones were done with school and hadn't bothered to visit them in years, so they didn't need anything from him. Turns out that was wrong. My ex-wife married a scam artist. He was rich, but he wasn't rich enough for the lifestyle she wanted, so he stole from his clients, and then he went to jail. My oldest kids are in a lot of debt. My ex is living with her parents. She recently tried to tell me that my parents needed to be fair with all their grandkids. I told her that it was their money to spend on the people they loved and who loved them back. She said that we were punishing her kids for her mistakes. I said that both of our kids were adults and hadn't made any effort to see me or my parents in over a decade. She said I'm being a jerk for not convincing my parents to help her kids. It feels like there's a lot missing from this story. You really make yourself out to be a martyr, OP. But fathers don't just get visitation only for no reason, and kids don't just go no contact for a decade because you couldn't afford Disneyland. You then married someone 13 years younger than yourself, which in this context just feels off. So, I don't know, dude. It sounds like either you and your family need to start treating your kids better, or you've lost them forever. Someone needs to be the adult here, but it seems like none of you are willing. OP. Okay, so I went through the comments and yours stuck out. I'll do my best to be honest here. I was not a perfect father. I don't think that anyone ever has been. I made mistakes, but I did try my absolute best. The best example I can give is that I took all of my time off when the kids weren't in school. I tried to make sure that we had quality time together. I didn't see them much when I was working. Their mom did the heavy lifting when it came to parenting. I gave each of my kids the full amount that I had saved for them for college. Their stepdad bought them each a car. I cannot afford to compete with that. Well, I can now, but I couldn't back then. The money I sent them was enough to cover 1.5 years of in-state tuition. The reason I use Disneyland as an example is because it seemed to me like once she found out my vacation time and plans, she then took the kids for a very expensive vacation to a place I would have had trouble affording. When I took them the following week, they were all vacationed out and just relaxed. I had planned for us to enjoy some time outdoors. I was disappointed, but I let them stay in the hotel and just play video games and read. I guess it was a boring vacation because they told me that they didn't want to go there again. They had enjoyed it there before. My wife was 24 when we met and had a kid. She wasn't a teenager or anything, and we got pregnant because we wanted to. I loved having a child in my life again, and we wanted more kids. My wife was willing to accept the hours that I work, and because I have more experience now and seniority, I make more money than I did during my first marriage. You keep mentioning how much money you make, but I just don't see how that factors into your story in any way. Kids grow up with poor fathers all the time and don't go no contact with them for a decade over it. Having less money than their mother doesn't mean that you only get visitation. I'm sure there were times where you worked to be a good father, but I guarantee you that if we asked your kids, they would be able to shed some light on what really happened in their childhood to have it all end up like this. And my earlier point was that it was your job and will always be your job to maintain contact with your kids, unless they explicitly don't want it, in which case you did something very bad. Even though they're older now, it's still your job to do anything you can to maintain a relationship with them if they want it. Sometimes kids pull back when they feel abandoned to see if that parent will fight for them. Kids need to know that their parents will fight for them. If you didn't fight for them, you just let them go no contact, then their worst fears are realized and you become an absolute deadbeat. In which case, your question should be, I was a deadbeat father to 2 kids I had with my ex, and now my parents won't help financially support them, even though we could, and yet we're supporting the 2 kids I had with my new young wife. Are we the jerks? To be clear, I'm not calling you a jerk, because like I said, we just clearly don't know the whole story. Not the jerk. But I'm always suspicious when a guy says the woman manipulated the kids. Kids don't stop talking to you because you don't buy them stuff and take them to expensive places, especially all the way into their adulthood. It's usually because you were a deadbeat and broke promises and weren't around a lot for them to create a bond. This is rarely the mother's fault, as most will happily want a break for a few days. Think you need to find the real reasons they don't talk to you. Well, what do you think? Are OP and his parents the jerks or not? Please let us know. If I had grandkids that went 10 years without wanting anything to do with me, you can bet your backside I wouldn't be leaving them a darn thing. Do this next. Tap here on your screen to come see our new podcast playlist, where you'll find thousands of hours of the best stories you've ever heard. Or tap the one on the right. That episode is specifically just for you, based on other videos you've enjoyed the most.